Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here to get your notes going for 4-4, graphing absolute value equations number 2. We're talking about the direction for the graphs. And so we did the graphing of absolute values on 4-3, where we showed you how to put the vertex on there. And then remember, the pattern is up 1 over 1 or down 1 over 1, depending on whether or not you have a positive or a negative. And that's what we have here as well. But the problem is they're not going to be 1 anymore. So this is the continuation here. So what do you do when it's not a 1 in front for your letter A? And the direction here does still work the same way. So even if it's not a 1, but a -2 or a +3, you know it's going to open up or down depending on if it's positive or negative. So that part doesn't change. And you do have to pay attention to the number, though. So if the number is bigger than 1, when they say the absolute value, they mean positive or negative. If the number in front is bigger than 1, then it's going to be a more narrower type of graph. And if the number in front, absolute value, again being positive or negative, if that number in front is going to be between 0 and 1, in other words, a fraction, then we say it's going to be shrunk or compressed, which makes the graph wider. So you'll see that here in just a second. Okay. So take a look. You have two equations on here. One of them has a 2 in front and the other one has a 3 in front. And I think of these as multipliers because normally, like I said, we're going to take a look at the vertex. Do the vertex the same way we did before. So the number in front, or number inside, excuse me, is a -3. The number outside the absolute value on the right is a -5. And then we say the vertex is going to be the opposite of the number inside, which is +3, and keep the -5. Okay, so same thing on this one over here. We have a -2 and +3. So just a reminder of how we did the vertex. Change the sign of the number inside, but keep the number outside. Okay, so your H and your K values are going to be your vertex for the absolute values. And then remember, these are V-shaped, so we need to know where to put the points. And like I said, on 4-3, we would just normally go up if it's positive, and we know we go up 1 over 1. Whereas these, they're slightly different because the number in front doesn't have a 1, the number in front has a 2 here. So on the one on the left, we're going to take our vertex, go from the bottom here, and we're going to go over 1, and instead of going up 1, we're actually going to go up 2. So on this one, from the red dot, over 1, up 1, 2, put a dot. And then on the other side, to the left, do the same thing. We're going to go over 1, up 1, 2. Okay, so every time we move to the next coordinate, it's always going to be a factor of 2 going up because that one has a 2 in front. So here at the purple dot, go up 2. You can go over 1 again. And I can do the same thing here. I can go up 2 and then over 1. So you have enough points here where you could graph this out. It's a solid line. On the second one, we can do the same thing. This one's going to go up 3, though, instead of 2, because the number in front changed to a 3. And it looks like this is going to go off the graph a little bit, and that's okay. So from the red dot, over 1, up 1, 2, and then 3 will be just slightly above. Same thing on the other side, over 1 to the left, and then up 1, 2, 3, right about there. And I think that's really all you can do on this one without guessing further. Okay, but connect the dots, make sure you have arrows, and that is the absolute value when you don't have a 1 in front. So it's actually not terribly tough, but you do have to pay attention to those 3 numbers, the 2 being your vertex, and the multiplier in front telling you how far to go up. Okay. All right. What do you do when there's a fraction in front? That's the question. So people tend to get freaked out by these ones, but don't. Remember, this is still the same pattern. We're still looking at the 2 numbers that are inside the absolute value and outside. So your H and your K for both of these, let's just put them in. I got -1, positive, or -1, -2, excuse me. Remember, change the sign of the one inside, but keep the other sign. Change the other sign here, the -1, and then keep that -4. So we're going to have a +1 instead, and keep the -4. Okay. And again, just make sure you put those vertices where they belong. The vertex has to go in the right place. And then from there, we put in our other missing points. Okay. So here's the fraction one. If you have a fraction in front, still a multiplier. So instead of going over 1 up 2, technically we're going over 1 up a half. But I don't like doing that. I'd rather just think of this as slope. So if you start from the red dot and just count rise and run, you're really rising 1 and going over 2. So from the red dot, go up 1 over 2, and then put in your point. Okay, and then I could do the same thing on the left. I'm going to rise 1 and go 2 to the left side. Okay, so it's instead of going up 1 over 1, now we're going up 1 over 2. Okay, and on the ones that had whole numbers, you could think of those as over 1. Okay, so on these graphs that we had here, remember we went in that direction. Technically, you could go up 2 and then over 1 if you're thinking of this as a slope. Okay, all right, so one more time on these, just flipping back. Here I went up 1 over 2, and then up 1 over 2. Put in your lines, make sure they have arrows. And then if you see the next one, you guessed it, this one's going to go up 1 over 3. From the red dot, up 1 over 1, 2, 3. And then from this red dot, up 1 over 1, 2, 3 to the left. Okay, fill in your arrows. So these aren't actually too tough if you recognize what to do with the number in front. Okay. If it's negative, don't forget negative numbers will just make the graph turn down or open down. So again, we have our vertices. This is all hopefully getting much easier as we go through these. Don't forget to look for your H and K. So opposite of -1, keep the 5. Here, this one's opposite of +2, so make it -2. And then keep the 3. There's your vertex. Put those dots on there. And then the last thing to do is check for your multiplier. If there's a multiplier out in front that's not a 1, it's a 4. And this time it's a negative. So I'm going to go down 4 and then over 1. If you, like I said, if you think of this as a slope, you can almost do that. So, I say over 1, down 4, or you could say down 4, which is the rise, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then over 1, right about there. Okay, and the same thing here, down 4 and then left 1. Okay, so these are going to be really steep. You can see that they're further apart, so they're going to be kind of stretched out a little bit vertically, which makes the graph narrower anytime the number in front's bigger than 1. And I can go down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 there, and from here and go down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1 there. Okay, put as many points as you need. I think as they're further apart, you really only need 3 points, but if they're closer together, 5 points tends to be a little bit better for accuracy. Okay, here's red dot. This one's at -2, 3. Now I'm going to go -2. So don't forget we're going down 2 from the red dot and then over 1. Down 2 over 1 to the left. So there's 3 points. That's pretty good. I don't think you necessarily need more points. Those are pretty far apart. Otherwise, if you want to put the other ones in, go for it. More points, more accurate. Okay. All right. Hopefully you're seeing the number in front is just kind of telling you how to find your next points from your vertex. Here I have -3, -2. Those are inside. This one has a +1 and a +4. So take a moment, write your vertices. And if you had these two, good job. And then don't forget, here's -1/2. Here's a -1/3. So remember, these are going to go down now. So down from the red dot, we're going to go down 1/2. So think of those as slopes to get to the next point. Down 1/2 to the right, and also down 1/2 to the left. Okay, and we can talk about why that works later on if you want when we get back on Monday. But just know that this is how I would graph them pretty easily. And then the other one we have from the red dot, go down 1 and then over 1, 2, 3 this time. On the other side, same thing, down 1 over 1, 2, 3. And then draw on your lines. Okay, easy peasy. All right, now we get to the other ones. What do you do when there's an inequality in front? Like this one has a less than, and this one has a greater than or equal to. So don't let those freak you out, because remember, we did inequalities and we had this little table that I gave to you to sort of decode what do we have a line that's solid or dashed, and do we shade up, do we shade down? So that's the main thing with the inequality ones, is just making sure you're paying attention to that. And that really should be like the last thing. So first thing is check your coordinate for your vertices. So we got these numbers here. Notice I'm starting off with the vertex every single time. So if you have -1 instead of +1, and then keep the 4. Over here, we're going to have a +1 instead of -1, and then keep the -4. Put your dots in for your vertices, and then pay attention to your multiplier. What's in front? That letter A is the multiplier. So if I'm looking at -2 here, that one's going to be a downward facing graph, and +3 over here, so that one's going to be an upward facing graph. So the main thing is put the points in. I've got -2 from the red dot. We're going to go down 2 over 1, and then also down to left 1. Whereas the other one, and 3, we're going to go, that's okay. 1, 2, 3 up over 1, and then 1, 2, 3 up over 1. As you saw, the line in here is solid. And the reason it's solid is because the underline that's there for the inequality tells me that it should be a solid line. Okay. Whereas over here on the left, this one doesn't have the underline. So remember, these are going to be dashed. So when I draw the line in for this one, don't forget to make that one dashed. Okay, so pay attention to the underline or not underline. Also, don't forget the shading. Shading up, shading down depends on less than or greater than. So both of these less thans would shade down. Both of these say greater than, they'll shade up. And since I have a less than here, we're going to shade below the vertex, which happens to be below the dotted lines as well, or dashed lines. And that one says to shade up, it's greater, so we're going to shade above the vertex, which happens to be above the solid lines as well. So just keep in mind, it's what's above or below the vertex, and then whichever side of the line that is, that we shade everything there. Okay. Try these two, and then let's see how you do on those. Okay, I just highlighted the important stuff, so let's see if you have the correct vertex. Pause. Great job. If you have both of these two vertices, go ahead and pause again and see if you can get the other two points on either side of the red dots. Great job if you have both of those correct. And then what I'd like you to do is to real quickly double check the type of line. Is it solid or dashed? And fill in the shading. So I'm going to give you a moment to pause and do that as well. Perfect. If you had solid line for the first one, don't forget this is shade down. So we're shading everything below. And on the other, we're shading everything above, greater than. Good job, guys. Make sure you do the assignment, please. Have a great